Showtime.
Welcome, everyone, to If Aliens Come to Earth. I'm Catherine Sullivan. I'll be moderating this panel, and we will have the panelists introduce themselves. And one reminder, we will have discussions in Discord after the panel, and the panelists are free to drop their website links in Discord at any time. Starting off with Stephen.
Hi, I'm Steve. I've published lots of short stories. I will have a new novel coming out in February of 2021 called Amid the Crowd of Stars from Daw Books. So that's me.
And I also forgot to mention, if anybody wants to mention their pronouns, this would be a good time too.
I would be he and him.
Okay. Daniel?
Hi, I'm Dan Kimmel. I'm a film critic based in the Boston area. You can find my regular reviews at northshoremovies.net. I write about classic science fiction movies for Space and Time magazine, and a collection of my essays appear in the Hugo-nominated Jar Jar Binks Must Die, which is another way of saying I didn't win. The reason I think I'm on this panel is because among my novels is this one. It's a secret, a novel about aliens, Hollywood, and the Bartender's Guide, which is about a space alien who wants to be a movie star.
Okay. Christine?
Hi, I'm Christine Taylor Butler, and my screen's frozen on my end, so I hope you can hear me. I am a full-time children's author, and I'm mostly known as, in this universe, the author of this series about a group of kids who discover their parents may or may not be who they say they are, and we won't go any farther than that. And I have grown up from childhood as a sci-fi fan, mostly about space and aliens, and so I think that's why I'm here.
And Douglas?
Hi, it's Douglas Johnson. If you come down to my basement, you'd see a set of bookshelf that has all the Star Trek toys that ever came out, and another one has another 5 shelves of various aliens. It's been over 20 years being an IT person, but prior to that, I was 20 years in the Air Force, which I retired from. But the last 8 years was working for an organization that changed names, but it was called the Foreign Technology Division. But they also were the people who wrote Project Blue Book, which is the official Air Force study of aliens. So that's probably what got me on this panel. And no, I don't have a book to sell.
And Mark?
I'm probably on this panel because when I worked for NASA, I led their Breakthrough Propulsion Physics project, which looked at things like faster than light and non-rocket space drives and the like. And now I work on interstellar concepts, putting together, the short way of saying is a catalog of the various ideas for interstellar propulsion. The challenge is that all of those are very preliminary in their estimates, and their claim performances are subject to open critique, and trying to figure out some way to compare those fairly to decide, well, which research would you do next? So, and along with that, one of the things I encountered, and if the panel doesn't already know about it, it's worth mentioning. In 2010, a mathematician, Claudio Maccone, who does a lot of work for SETI, did a statistical analysis to try and estimate where might be the closest habitable planet and the closest inhabited planet. And now, granted, this is using data from 2010 and obviously with some guesses, but the numbers that he came out with is the possible closest habitable planet might be around 70 light years, and the closest civilization might be 1900 light years. Now, those are, gross estimates, but at least they are actually based on some things, some statistical analysis. So in the context of how far away might they be and how long that might take them to get there, that's some data.
And again, I'm Catherine Sullivan, she, her. I'm probably moderating this because I did write some short stories influenced by science fiction that I read way back that aliens might be coming to Earth. So, oh goodness, all these. Douglas, let's start off with you. Because I mean, the description of the panel is: would they come? Have they?
Well, I feel that they probably have, because I've been also following UFOs for years. But if they officially showed up, well, now they probably wouldn't because we have the COVID. But if they officially showed up, if they weren't obvious, unfortunately, because I was thinking about this panel, it'll be a Roswell and everything will be hidden away. The only way everybody would know is if they did like the day the Earth stood still and they like landed in the middle of Washington D.C. But there's this, you know, I think they're there and they have been here. We just haven't, it never got solid evidence to present to anybody. Plus, unfortunately, if the government has anything to do it, especially the military, if they could hide it away, they would. Because if you look at Project Blue Book, they definitely said, well, there was plenty of incidents, but we could never find an incident of actual extraterrestrial life. So there's things going on, but you know, we're not saying ET is here, but then it came out in later years. Some of the things people had seen and reported were possibility experimental aircraft. So.
Okay, any other panelists want to join in on this?
I'll be, even though I've written lots of first contact novels, I'm pretty skeptical that any aliens have ever been here. And I would actually raise the question of, would we even recognize alien life if it showed up here? Because for a lot of the movies, when they get represented, they're pretty much humanoid, maybe with strange foreheads and noses and such, but they're pretty much look to be evolved from apes of some sort. But that's not necessarily the case. We may not even recognize them as an alien life form. We may not be able to communicate with them. They may be so totally different from us that there's really no way for us to really communicate well with them at all. So I'm a skeptic in as far as, have they been here? I seriously doubt it.
Well, we always think about War of the Worlds, and would they come here because they might be exposed to our diseases and our viruses, and it never occurs to us to think they could come here and we're exposed to their diseases,
theirs, yes.
and their viruses, and so that would be an interesting, different take. Do I think aliens are here? Yeah, and I agree with Stephen. I don't think we would recognize them because we always assume that they're bipedal and carbon based, and who says something's not watching us?
Along those lines, I mean, who's to say they didn't arrive in very tiny spaceships, and as soon as they opened their hatch, we accidentally inhaled them. But on the other question about, are they here or will they be here? One of the techniques I do to keep from slipping into confirmation bias, where you reach a conclusion and then only look at things that support that conclusion.
Support it, yeah.
I simultaneously entertain very conflicting hypotheses, including, entertaining that aliens are amongst us, to all the way that, it's just a religious phenomenon or whatever. And then as evidence rolls over me and I put weighting factors on the reliability of the evidence, is to see which one of those buckets seem to be filling up most with evidence. And when it comes to, and as those buckets go, when it comes to like the UFO and they're here sort of thing, the bucket that seems to get really full is that assumption is like a religious phenomenon. It's a belief system where it doesn't matter if there's evidence or not, and the evidence is just avowed. But I haven't seen anything that convinces me that they're here yet. I'm also not convinced that they're not. I'm open to the possibility. From the physics that we understand so far, it would be extremely difficult to travel, but that's not to say it's impossible. And then I wonder that if we did start to uncover things like, say, faster than light physics, would it not just open up ways of traveling to other distances, but other things that we can't even imagine to see now, that we suddenly can travel to. The reason I bring that up is some of the debates on the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox. Well, why aren't they here? Is that, well, faster than light must be impossible because they're not here. But what if faster than light, once you open that up, creates all sorts of other realms that you can go to, not just other planets in our own space, but other things. So the amount of time it would take you to check all that other cool stuff out would mean it's going to take you an awful long time to get around to meeting other civilizations in our own galaxy.
Well, we keep assuming all we know is all there is to know. So there's kind of an arrogance to the way that we look at this. We don't know how to travel faster than light. We don't have the kind of propulsion that we would need. And you know, when I'm out in schools, most of what I do is children's nonfiction. And when I'm out at schools, I go, you know, if you look at the model of an atom and the way the electrons and protons are, you know, orbiting, and then you look at the way our solar system is modeled. I said, let's just take that and pretend it's Horton Hears a Who, and that we think we are the center of the universe, but really we are probably something very infinitesimally small in someone else's universe. You just have to, stretch a little bit to believe that we are not the be all and end all. Because if we are, our planet's kind of a mess, and we're the parasites messing it up. So I would like to believe there's something better out there.
I have a friend who says that aliens have come to visit us, but they've decided there is no intelligent life on Earth, and that's why they passed us by. As a film critic and as an author, I look at aliens on Earth as a metaphor. As far as I know, we haven't met any actual aliens, at least not to our knowledge. So the aliens in these various stories signify something else for us. If you look at, let's say, like a lot of the science fiction movies and stories of the Cold War, the aliens are often them, the Russians, or science out of control, something that's beyond us. And then you've got the flip side of that, you know, think of E.T. or Close Encounters or Alienation, where the aliens are sort of like good versions of us, what we might aspire to. So that in fact, I did a whole essay that was called "The Alien is Metaphor." I think that's how I look at aliens in science fiction.
I'd go with that. I think a lot of the aliens in science fiction literature are metaphorical. That they're there to prove a point, and you just use the aliens to prove whatever point, philosophical point the author wants to make. I'm guilty.
Yeah. Of course. One of the things that I most like, in fact, what I did in my own novel, was that the alien as the innocent outsider who can make these naive and yet very pungent observations about our life, because it's they're coming from the outside and go, so why do you do it this way? Why, like, in fact, in my book, it goes, why do you have fiction and nonfiction? Like, nonfiction is the aberration. Why don't you have truth and non-truth? And it says, the alien allows you to look at the world in a different way.
Douglas, do you have any thoughts about why we're suddenly getting more UFO sightings reported lately, and they're releasing the Air Force findings?
Who did you ask?
Yeah, ask me.
And then I'll get back to you, Mark.
Well, still more and more showing up, and probably the sensibility that you can only talk for so long to saying that an Air Force pilot or a Navy pilot is seeing things when they're actually catching it on gun cameras and stuff like that. So, somebody's finally bit the bullet and said, yeah, maybe they've seen something.
Mark, your thoughts on that?
The one thing that comes to mind is that with the proliferation of cameras and video cameras on all our person over the last decade or so, that the number of pictures of UFOs has not increased proportionally, which that's like one of the pieces of information I would look for. It's that if your record keeping or record taking cameras or whatever ability has greatly increased, you would expect then that you would also have a greater number of sightings. And I haven't seen that, which makes me wonder. And then one could argue both ways. One could say, well, they have the ability to make those devices ineffective. And as far as the Air Force or the Navy camera things, I have no idea what to make of that. That is really cool. The part that I found, and I haven't looked into it much, but that it was both on, that you could see them visually and they showed up in the infrared, meaning there's two different wavelengths that you're seeing them. It's like, well, that's pretty cool. I don't know what to make of it other than that becomes more substantive information. But beyond that, I wouldn't know what to say. Oh, yeah, I guess one other thing is that even if the aliens were here and they had flying saucers and all that sort of stuff, I don't think I would be drawn to want to study them until there was some tangible physical thing that I knew if I was working on it was actually the real thing rather than some telltale thing. And so for my own sense of investigation, I would want that threshold to be crossed, which I haven't seen crossed. And that would be really cool if that could happen. But I also know, wouldn't I be biased? Because imagine if you went back in time and showed the Wright brothers a 747. And would they think that, well, the aluminum had some important bearing? The wing layout is different than theirs. The airfoil shape was different. Would they think that the ducted fans were important? Would it mislead them? Whereas if we want to make the breakthroughs ourselves to figure out what might turn in eventually into a flying saucer sort of thing, building on the knowledge that we have, and if we saw a real one, would it mislead us about how to go about figuring it out? I don't know. That's just stuff that I pondered.
Well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry,
Go.
along those lines, one of the movies that I thought was most interesting in the last few years was a movie called Arrival, in which the aliens were truly alien. They weren't humanoid. The whole point of the movie was trying to figure out how to communicate with them because they were completely different from anything outside of our experience. And that was very unusual in the way aliens have been depicted in our science fiction.
Mm-hmm. And when I was working on the book, I have a lot of friends who are researchers or journalists, and they're always sending me weird, quirky things, but you don't get any quirkier than MIT. And I came across this quote where an MIT professor said the Dogon village in Africa had knowledge they didn't have any business knowing. So I was like, wonder what that refers to. And it's because part of the Dogon legends are that they were visited by ancestral beings who were kind of aquatic, who came down and gave them knowledge of Sirius B circulating around the dog star long before Earth had telescopes powerful enough to see them. So that became part of their legend, and that the Nomos then sank their ship, which for me then became Atlantis when I was working on the series. And so if you look at, here's what we know that's land-based, but you go under sea and you've got these, colossal squids, and you've got, octopi that can open jars and, change their color. And that's why I said, we know what we know. And when we assume if it's alien, we as human beings are going to know what it is. But, we don't count for the fact that Earth is covered primarily by water. And there are creatures we've never seen because we can't go deep enough, or they don't. So I think sometimes we have to suspend our disbelief. And then the converse of that is, let's just assume there are no aliens. Let's just assume we're it. There was a great experiment on life and we were it and we failed. So there's nothing else out there. That would be even more depressing. That would be even more lonely. So I think, the whole concept of science fiction and our trying to envision that there is something else out there is because we really don't know. The universe is infinite, but also there's a kind of loneliness associated with the idea that this is all there is. I think that's why sci-fi thrives.
Yeah, I understand. And I was just thinking too, and mind you, this is a very human-centric argument, but as far as alien spacecraft and UFOs and that, look at how we have explored other planets. We've not gone there ourselves. What we've done is sent probes. So if there happened to have been somebody on Mars, they would have seen a flying object, but there's nothing, there's nobody in it. If I were exploring an alien planet, I'd be sending a probe first before I ever decided to step foot on it. In fact, I may never step foot on it because that's not safe. I don't want to breathe in their biome, and I don't want to breathe out my biome into their atmosphere. So, if UFOs exist, possibly they just could be probes.
Okay,
That's a good point. Yeah,
we're hitting about the time that we've asked for questions, so we've got a few comments. Larry K says, I read many books and articles on UFOs from the last century and did not see any credible evidence of alien physics. Is there any recent 21st century evidence that actually could prove the existence of ET visitors?
I can't answer that one.
And if
Yeah,
not,
we're all stumped.
The panel is stumped.
okay. And David Damerl, UFO sightings around 1900 describe, sometimes in great detail, airships. It is curious how the aliens always seem to use a type of vehicle we can already imagine. Good comment. And P6V8 says, there's been some deep debunking of the dog and Sirius thing. And those aren't really questions, but any thoughts on those?
Oh, you know what? I mediated it in the book when one of the characters is talking to a Dogon priest. He says it might be real or it might be something we made up for nosy tourists, but he will not answer the question. I was typing that sometimes when we debunk things, it's very Eurocentric. It is not possible for Africans to know things, and yet you look at the things that were going on in Easter Island, or I've been exploring some of the things going on in Mayan culture, and you just happen to have carvings that just happen to look like someone's in a chair looking up at the stars with a telescope, and there are all kinds of Eurocentric explanations for why they can be anything other than what it looks like. And so I would go, I don't know. I think that it is a habit for us to decide if we don't know it or we have not discovered it, it doesn't exist. And the example I will give you, which is not a sci-fi example, is I worked for Hallmark. I think the statute of limitations is up since I left. I worked for Hallmark, which is a social expression company. That's what they do. We're going to make cards. We're going to help you connect. And we were trying to fast track Kwanzaa through the system. And one manager said, what is Kwanzaa? Because it can't be that important if I have not heard of it. So I apply that to science. We know what we know, and then we debunk everything else because it doesn't fit like the model that we think it should.
I agree with you, Christine. I think a lot of stuff, if we can't imagine it, it can't exist. It's not possible for it to exist, because we didn't do that.
Right.
And we've got another comment that sounds interesting. J-Bob, we may never be able to allow extraterrestrials to Earth because of the potential damage to the biosphere.
Absolutely.
But how do you stop them?
not to plug it, well, to plug the book I have coming out in February, that's what it's about. It's about the very fact that there's a reason why when we send probes to other planets, we sterilize them first because we don't want to infect them, and we don't bring them back because we don't want to infect us.
Mhm.
There's reasons we do those kind of things, and the truth is that H.G. Wells did it years ago with his book, The War of the Worlds, where the Martians succumbed to colds, basically, and that's the truth. We don't know what would happen if if we went to another planet. I've seen dozens and I'm sure everybody here has seen dozens and dozens of movies and read dozens and dozens of books where we humans go to another planet, we check the atmosphere, it's breathable. Oh, we take off the helmets. No, we're idiots.
I get a kick that the term, and it was on his business card too, of the NASA people who are responsible for making sure we don't contaminate. They're called planetary protection officers.
Ooh.
Oh,
Ah, I have to tell you, one of my favorite scenes is in Galaxy Quest, where they go to get the beryllium spear and the miners are looking cute, and Sigourney Weaver is going to go over, and then the guy who always gets killed off the show says, "Have you ever even watched the show?" And so I just, I would like to believe if the universe is infinite and, according to physicists, the universe is moving, there may be more than one universe. We think of it as only the universe. That there are many other iterations out there, and they don't necessarily have to be traveling. They don't have to be carbon based. I thought about when
another
Stephen
one,
said
yeah.
we sterilize a ship, but if we send it to some place where the life forms are allergic to the steel, or we don't know what we don't know, so we do the best we can. I think aliens right now are running the government, so
I did a short story once of a first contact in which, what people have been saying about the biosphere, there could be a germ, it could be infected. I mean, that's all true. But I took it to a different level where the Earth ambassador opens his mouth and all the aliens start covering their ears, screaming in agony because the sound it's like, please stop talking. We're going to shoot you if you make another sound. Meanwhile, from the other side, the humans are keeling over because of the odor of the aliens. That we just so often we assume, like I said, it's going to be somebody with a funny nose or blue skin or ears or something, but it could be something as basic as that we're just not compatible, and that there's a reason for that.
Douglas? Douglas, do you have anything?
No, but I was just sort of thinking that the reason lately we haven't really seen a bunch is in our past few years, unfortunately, like now the pandemic, H1N1, AIDS, and all that other stuff. If you were an alien coming and you started analyzing the environment and listening to the radio broadcast, would you come to an infected planet?
Good point.
well, here's a question I'll throw out is there was an episode of the Outer Limits reboot where there was an alien signal coming in, and it was only impacting the kids and the teens. And the dad, who was a scientist, was trying to figure out what was going on. And all of the kids, they were trying to block out the sound. The kids were becoming addicted to the sound. And it turned out at the end of the show, the sun was there was something wrong with the sun, and it was going to be sending out all this radiation. So the music was changing the biology of the children. so they could survive this catastrophe. So at the end of the show, you see them all coming out and they're covered with what looks like scales, but the adults cannot come out of their shelters because of the solar radiation, but the kids can. And so then the question I have is, you take something like COVID-19, which seemed to like come out of nowhere, and it's coronavirus, but it's novel because it's not something we've seen before. You look at something like Ebola and you go, is it possible to terraform Earth by sending something to Earth that begins to take out a portion of the population, but builds up an immunity in other parts of the population? And so I just, I'm sorry, that's just where my mind works. I should have read traditional fiction as a kid, and I did not. So you're stuck with me.
We're the aliens.
We are.
It's all,
And we've got another comment. Oh, go ahead.
no, it's all Thanos job. For the Marvel movie, Thanos.
Oh, okay.
You know,
we got.
instead of going into dust, he's just infecting the world with various diseases.
Yeah.
We've got another comment. We've got another comment. Studies tries to detect transmissions from alien civilizations. Should we be concerned about needlessly advertising our presence to other civilizations? Given the huge distances involved, is there a real danger of hostile alien invasions?
Well, I got two answers to that.
Okay.
One is, it's a cliche. It's too late. We have been sending out radio and television signals for decades. And we've all, seen, or in my case, have written stories in which people show up wanting to meet Ralph Cramden or Captain Kirk or something like that because they got the signals from Earth. But my publisher, Ian Randall Strock at Fantastic Books, who is also an author and editor, wrote a wonderful story in which all these various planets, they all have their version of listening to the signal from space. And so everybody's quiet because they're all listening and they don't hear anything because they're all waiting for the other planet to contact them. So the absence of a signal doesn't prove anything.
I'm going to chime in here with two things. Once I was involved with some of that debate between David Brin and I forget the Russian who was sending signals, and they called it METI, messaging extraterrestrials. And before I come back to that, regarding our detectability, if we're assuming technology comparable to our own, the listener, I think, would have to be within 10 light years because our signals are not that strong unless they're definitely focused. So the old I Love Lucy episodes and stuff like that, you have to be, like closer. I think it was 10 light years. I don't remember the exact number right now, but it's not very far. The more focused things, however, like lasers, yeah, they would be something that could be picked up. But what I found interesting, coming back to the active debate between the person that was sending it, one thing that struck me as very disturbing is his attitude is that he called it his religion. It was a belief system that he assumed that the aliens would be a good thing to know, and that it was his duty to help humanity by doing this. And any discussion that it might be a bad idea, he just didn't want to listen to. It was not a good scientific discussion. It was clearly that particular individual who is messaging was heavily biased and blindsided by other things, which was disappointing because I would like to have more debate. But on the more general thing, and I like the idea too, everyone's being quiet to make sure they hear the signal rather than communicating. That's a cute idea I've not heard before. But my own personal opinion, and this I'll put in the category of personal, is that, let's just listen for a while. It's too soon to message until we could do something about getting an answer.
Right, and worrying about whether just because we're kind of broadcasting stuff, it still doesn't go any faster than the speed of light. which means even if we've been doing it for decades, it hasn't reached very far, given the scope of our galaxy and the entire universe. It hasn't gone very far anyway. So I'd say the chances of worrying, I would not worry about it myself.
Douglas?
Well, there might still be people listening out there that like the movie Contact. The first thing that was broadcast was a speech by Hitler. So if we're broadcasting stuff, what stuff has got out there, and if you're listening to that on some other planet, are they getting the good parts about us or the bad parts about us?
I was going to make a very bad joke about the fact that a long time ago, I was with a friend of mine who was in labor. It was the first time I'd ever seen a live birth live. And that is probably the closest to alien that you will ever see, is this live purple squirming thing. And, they peek up when you slap them and they scream. But I was like, oh my God, we are the aliens. Look at this. This is just...
But Denise had when she had our second child, our son, she had our first child, Megan, by cesarean, and so they had to do cesarean for her the second time, and we had an intern in the room with the person doing the surgery. And he found out I was a science fiction writer, and he was just like, "Ooh, cool! I love science fiction stuff." And they started to work on poor Denise, and all of a sudden he goes, "This is just like Alien."
It is.
The doctor said, "You're out of here."
Well, it's funny. One of the things that I brought up in my novel about the alien in Hollywood is, as he's watching all of these old science fiction movies, how many of them portray the alien as the monster or the villain? And we're in an era now where we're reconsidering our past culture and the hidden assumptions that were there. I mean, imagine if you're a space alien and you're watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Thing and Alien and Predator and all these movies that, oh, you're not from Earth, you must be a monster.
Mm-hmm.
Not our best foot forward.
Oh, and also imagine if we get a signal from some extraterrestrial, was that someone like this guy from Russia who was not necessarily a representative of the culture? That culture's outlier weirdo, and we get a message from a weirdo thinking the grand civilization has finally sent their opening overtures to it, and we're at some lunatic's ramblings, and we take it all too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, if you got an alien invasion, what would they want from Earth that they couldn't get elsewhere?
Good point.
Food. To serve man.
To serve man.
To serve food.
So you think, let's see, it was V when they wanted all the oceans. Well, there's a lot of stuff in the ocean. It's not really clean water, folks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but there's large quantities of it.
Protein.
Yeah.
Like, that was one of the last Tom Cruise movies, weren't they? So what they're trying to do is suck up all the water.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Octavia Butler wrote this great trilogy called Xenogenesis, in which the aliens arrive, and what they want is, well, the way we evolve is by merging with other species. So you can either merge with us, or we're going to neuter all of you so you can never reproduce again. Amazing concept. They're a great series of books, but I had never even thought of anything like that before. She was an incredible author.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that, because if one more person asked me if I have read Octavia Butler's Kindred, I'm just going to choke myself. It's like, no, she wrote something else. She wrote a lot of other things. And,
Yes.
Please, can we get off the slave story and talk about the real science fiction-y, imaginative stuff? So thank you. A+ for that.
I was fortunate enough to meet her at a convention once, and the woman had a sense of humor. Some of her books could be so dour and dark, but she wasn't. She was wonderful, and she's one of the 2 MacArthur geniuses that I've met. So I was really impressed and glad I got a chance to meet her.
I will say to the person who asked about the SETI transmissions, when I was first working on the series, I had worked that into the book because it was something I wanted the kids to find. So I used to run it as a screensaver on my Mac when I wasn't on my Mac. And, I went a couple of years ago and said, wonder if that's still around, because that Mac was so old. And I don't know that it's Mac friendly anymore. I think it's pretty much Windows based. So if that's true.
The home version.
Is that what?
Yeah, I think they closed down the home version.
Yeah, because I was going to say, if it were true, us Mac Apple people are no longer broadcasting our existence to the world. Yeah.
Was a Mac person, yeah.
Yay.
Oh, I love this comment in chat that somebody in our audience who said that the aliens might be like missionaries who want to convert us to their religion.
Oh, that's a good premise.
Which is arrogant, and it is exactly right. It's like that was what motivated H.G. Wells to write War of the Worlds. He said, look what the British are doing, to all these other countries. What would happen if advanced civilization showed up here? So what would happen if the missionaries came from some other civilization and that they want to save us? That's a great question.
That's a great concept for a book.
Well, and actually, since we've gone down that road so much in our own history, at least it would be a familiar theme.
Yeah, that's a good topic.
Any other thoughts?
Scioto was talking to us and using contact again, where supposedly, that person who did go to the far planet, was gone for 30 seconds, but they had like 12 hours of tape. So, we could be getting signals through SETI, but somebody in the government has decided they don't want to share with us.
Mm-hmm. If we look at the fact that rare earth minerals are found primarily in Africa, now the Chinese are going over there and trying to, buy up land. If we could think about, Earth is unique in its position in the solar system and the different ecosystems that we have, and even if we look at how much water we have, what is it? They're all just like base elements. And so, maybe they don't want the water, maybe it's the hydrogen or it's the oxygen, or maybe we are like those rare earth minerals. We have something on Earth that their part of the universe does not have. And we are simply someplace to be colonized and mined for the material. But I'm also of a mind, I was having this discussion with my husband about, writing a short story. I said, what if Earth is sentient and we are the aliens on Earth? What if we are the parasites and the diseases and all of these things that are happening is to rid itself of the parasites in the same way we go to the doctor and ask for an antibiotic or a drug to get rid of the things that are going on. So I think there's internal and then there's external. And I think there's a lot about us that's still alien.
We're getting close to the close. We've got one other question in the comments. We'll do that one, and then anything else we'll just follow up in Discord. From J-Bog, how could we evaluate the motivations of aliens if they do arrive, especially if they are so alien they are either unwilling or unable to communicate? Anyone?
That's if anyone's read Herman Melville's story Bartleby the Scrivener, that's pretty much Bartleby, who would consistently say to his boss whenever he was asked to do something, "I prefer not to," and that's all he would say. Wouldn't explain it, wouldn't talk about it, and you never know why he refuses to do all these things. It's actually a really nice story, and that could work into. It's a nice idea for a story. I'm not going to do it, but but I like that idea that they're just unwilling to communicate. We're here. You figure out.
There's a wonderful Robert Silverberg novel, I think it's The Alien Years, in which, Earth has been invaded by these, far advanced aliens, and they've taken over the planet and they're crushing everything in their path. And they're basically treating humans the way we would treat rabbits getting into our vegetable garden. They won't acknowledge us. They won't negotiate with us. We're vermin. We're just like, we're in their way. And it was a very different take on the alien invasion novel. Not like, oh, we've got to suppress the civilization. It's like, we're not even noticing you. You're not even worthy of our consideration. 5-minute warning. I guess
Yes.
we're running out of time.
So, a closing statement as we close. If you can answer this question and then tell people where they can find you. From Larry K, what stories in print or visual media that you think are the best or must read stories about alien visits?
I'll chime in, and this is not a fiction thing. There's an anthropologist, Catherine Denning, from Toronto. She's done work for SETI, and what she's good for is helping dispel the myths about past human analogies of like when the Spanish arrived in South America that we think we can use as models. She helps spell out where was the reality on that and how it might apply to SETI. And I think her writings are fitting stuff to read on the topic.
And where can people find you?
Oh,
Or you just want to put it in Discord?
yeah, I'll just end now.
Anybody else?
Okay,
come talk.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Just come talk to me on Twitter, and I'm Christine, but just my initials, TNB. And
what story in print or visual do you think is the best or must read?
I'm going to go with Daniel and do Octavia Butler's Acts of Generosity. I mean, we're reading a lot of current authors, but I'm adamant we get off the Kindred kick. So I'm giving Daniel, 2 thumbs up on that one. I would say read that one because it's so heartfelt, but it's so unusual and it's quiet. It's a quiet book.
Yeah, wonderful series. Let's see. Well, you can find me on Goodreads or on Facebook with my middle initial, which is M for Mark. Although I don't use the name, I just use the middle initial. In terms of alien stories, I'll recommend 2. One is the classic Murray Leinster short story First Contact, which I think goes back to the 1940s. It's a legendary classic story. I'm not going to spoil the punchline, but it's a great one. And then, just to be totally so self-serving, my novel. It's a secret. My publisher will yell at me if I don't plug my book.
For me, you can find me on Facebook under my own name, Stephen Lay. Or you could hit my website, which is www.stephenlay.com. As to which book, there's so many out there. I don't even know where to start. I've always loved Samuel Delaney's short stories. And I think he's a wonderful short story writer. Not so much a novelist, but a great short story writer. So I'd say, look, there's lots of stuff out there.
Douglas?
Yeah, I have no suggestions for books because right now I'm either reading Halo or military science fiction, so I haven't read any alien books lately. So I don't have a good recommendation for that, but if people are trying to find me, I probably the best source may be LinkedIn, and I'm working for a company called COLSA, COLSA. Unfortunately, I have the name that 10,000 other people have out there. So just look for Douglas Johnson in Ohio. You might be able to find me.
Yeah, and I'm Catherine Sullivan. I can be found at catherinesullivan.com. And not one's coming to Earth, but more of Jenna Kagan's Hellspark.
Did we get you, Mark?
Yeah, Mark started off.
Oh, okay.
Say again?
I didn't remember if we'd gotten you.
Okay. And thank you all for listening to the panel. Thank you, panelists, for having a wonderful discussion.
Thank you for
Thank you for moderating.
Thank you.
We're gone.
That was fun. Thank you, guys and gals.
Bye.
Bye.
See you in Discord.